Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got
Another
it!
one!
Oladipo!
Another one! Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Galloway finds Rob Finnessy, who fires the three, and
He hit it!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you from high atop the 18th fairway at the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Tuesday. Welcome aboard, Dustin, Schutte, as always, co-host. I'm Jim Coyle, John, the producer, keeping things in line. Hope you guys are ready to get after it. Another day, lots going on as Auburn has fired their coach amid a $15 million buyout. Names like Lane Kiffin, Deion Sanders popping up. Jim Harbaugh wants criminal charges filed as a result of the latest tunnel incident. This one with Michigan State. This is the second tunnel incident they've had this season, by the way. The Athletic has picked Indiana as its most expected disappointing basketball team of this season. We'll talk about that. But don't get too worried. That's right in front of Kansas, then North Carolina. Rain wiped out Game 3 of the World Series. Doesn't happen every day. And we got plenty of everything else to get to as well. There's lots to talk about. How's everybody doing? On the program today, Mike DeCourcy will join us. Connie Hoosier will join us. I'm sure he's looking forward to. Apparently, there was a bunch of gasoline dumped down into the sewers or something in Bloomington. Don't know how that happened, but I just happened to see something on that earlier. So, how's everybody doing? How's Mr. Schutte doing?
I'm doing great. Busy day yesterday in the world of college football. And don't forget, we've got the first college football playoff rankings tonight as well. Yeah. So we'll see what happens there. But Brian Harsin was a lame duck. And
yep, 15 million, baby.
Another major buyout, 7.5 of it's due within the next 30 days. So, I mean, there's no better job than being a bad football coach.
I'm telling you. I'm in the wrong business, baby. Wow. I just love the amount of money these guys get for being terrible.
Yep.
That's why I don't understand why contracts are not written, and they would all have to be that way, but they should all be performance-based.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in a regular job and you're not performing, what happens? You lose your job and you don't get $15 million handed to you. You just get the boot. But and these guys suck and get rewarded.
You know what's crazy too is when you look at some of these numbers, like you go back and you look at Jimbo Fisher, his record is insanely similar to what Kevin Sumlin was at Texas A&M. PJ Fleck's record at Minnesota is insanely close to what Jerry Kills was, and I think even maybe Glenn Mason, what his was. For the most part, the records are going to be incredibly similar based on the program. Now, it might change a little bit because now of the transfer portal and because of NIL and some of that sort of stuff. But for the most part, I mean, you're going to target the same recruiting. You're going to be in the same spot. It's just a matter of if you can do that consistently. So I don't know why some of these schools want to pay. We always hear about, well, they got to be willing to pay. They got to be willing to pay. Well, just because you write a big check doesn't mean it's going to produce results. And I think for the most part, it probably does not. So there are some schools where that's been the case. But I mean, you could take a chance on a head coach that doesn't require a big salary, and you might be in a better spot. This idea that you've got to pay somebody $80 million with a $30 million buyout to be a successful football program, I'm like that hypothesis has been debunked at this point.
I agree. Some of our favorite peeps hitting us up early on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. Dwayne says, happy birthday. I'm not sure who that's to. Whose birthday is it? Dwayne. Cam Jones. Yep, we'll talk about that. Indiana loses wide receiver Cam Jones. We'll hear from Cam Camper, rather. Cam Jones that's a whole different story. We'll hear from Tom Allen later, as he announced that yesterday at his weekly press conference, unfortunately, for the Indiana football team. Michelle, were you at the coaches show last night? Says she saw Don Fisher got his Snickers on the coaches show.
There we go.
Well, I happened to be someplace before the coaches show, and a guy had some of those. I'm saying, hey, can I get some of those Snickers bars? And so I grabbed some and dropped them off last night. But so, yeah, Michelle, that's cool. If you were there, then you need to come out to BB's. Let's see. No word on when Indiana won't be talking about TJD or Tamar Bates. They don't talk about injuries. If you haven't noticed by now, they're either in or they're out. Bill says it's going to be 60 degrees in the UP.
Woo. Good weather.
That's warm. It's going to be 70 in Bloomington, I think, today.
Wow.
For the high. Wyatt jumping on. Saw Wyatt at the coach's show last night. Had the good fortune of meeting Wyatt. He drove up from not Vincennes. He goes to school in Vincennes. He keeps telling me Lagodi. So good to meet him. And I know they got pictures with the coach afterwards.
Nice.
That's the thing. He is so outgoing. When he's done with his show, he goes and his family's there. When he's done, he goes and sits down with his family. They've eaten or whatever. He's got a couple friends there, and they hang out. And that was not the case before. I can tell you that.
Right.
It's just a completely different, relaxed environment. It's the way I think the environment should be. I mean, a coach needs to be doing that stuff in the town where they are.
Right.
I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's Auburn. I don't care where it is. But I think that should always be the case. Robert says you just checked in talking about Tom Allen and the buyout. No. I not even brought that up. I have no idea what it is, and it doesn't matter. That's not something that is happening. That is not going to happen at Indiana, not this year, for certain. He'll get another year to try to see if he can get it turned around. They still have 4 games left this year. That's one of the things. Actually, I'll have John pull that up. But I asked, and I wanted to ask Walt Bell this, but I asked Tom and I asked Chad Wilt. You've got 4 games left this year, and I'll give John to get that pulled up later. But I said, what is it? What do you need to see for there to be progress? For you to know that, all right, we've moved forward. Because these last 4 games, it might be the toughest 4-game stretch of the season.
Yeah.
Without question. Probably it is without question. You're going to have Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State, and Purdue, a rivalry game. And while Purdue is not, they've performed better than Indiana this year, but it's also the rivalry aspect of it. And Purdue is going to need that game badly. Jeff Brom wants that game, needs that game badly. So it's going to be tough sledding. But Indiana is still, there needs to be progress. You can't just be flatlining. They have to have progress against those teams. But it'll be interesting to see what that is defined by on the coach's side.
Defined by
that again
and what
the
it
season
and what it looks like, because these next two games, I don't know. I think Indiana has. I think in just about every game they've played this season, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, they've at least looked competitive. Maybe not the Cincinnati game, but they've looked competitive. They've played hard in every single game. I mean, their biggest loss this season, Michigan, 31-10, was a game that they trailed by 7 points in the middle of the fourth quarter, and they had the football, so they had a chance to tie the game. So what does that look like against Penn State and Ohio State, two teams that can move the ball, two teams that are really good defensively? The one thing that you can say is this team has never thrown in the towel. They've never given up. Like, they've not been good, but they continue to fight. So I feel like there's at least something that you can build on, but it's got to translate. You got to at least get one win. We've talked with Mitchell Page about this. You can't end the season on a 9-game losing streak. You just can't. You've got to get one.
The most disappointing thing has been the defense. I mean, because Tom Allen has taken it back over, and it was their most experienced unit coming back, and they were coming off of a year of injuries and where you knew that they had really been affected. They don't have those excuses this year. And minus the linebacker, but you cannot lose one guy and have it wreck the whole side of the ball.
Right.
But yeah, the most disappointing side without question is the defense. I mean, yeah, the offensive line was the offensive line, but if the defense been a little bit better, the marginal offense which has glimpses of being able to do things would have been able, I think, to win 2 other games right now. They could have beaten
for sure.
Easily Maryland. They should have won that game. Probably Nebraska.
Yep.
I mean, that puts them at 5 wins right there.
Yep.
But it is what it is, and so there's no point in. But the question from Chris, thank you very much, by the way. Great show as always. Just curious if IU moves on from Tom Allen this year. Who are some of the candidates? No, I absolutely believe that is not going to be an option. I'm not, and no one that I know has suggested that it be an option from the media side, because it's just not going to happen. Tom Allen will have another year to try to get it turned around. And they had a great recruiting class last year. Can they hold on to those guys? If they can, and if they can hit the portal at a few key spots, well, they could probably raise the level of this team again back to a team that can reach bowl eligibility at the very minimum, which would probably be enough to keep his job next year.
Oh, for sure. Got to attack the offensive line, got to attack the defensive backfield. The other thing I want to say too about this coaching stuff, I don't think Tom Allen would have been terminated no matter what happens. But the other thing about this is you're also got to remember that right now you're competing with Colorado, Nebraska, Wisconsin, now Auburn's open, Arizona State. There's a lot of other jobs out there that people would want over Indiana. So even if this was a make or break year for Tom Allen, I still think you would give him another year, because when you look around the landscape, all the jobs that are open, there's some pretty attractive jobs. So that's gonna limit your candidate pool. So I don't think it's gonna be a factor no matter what, but that's just another factor in this whole thing.
Well, and it looks like we got to take a break, but there's no, I'm not even going to have a conversation about that, since that's not going to be an issue. It's not going to be the case. So there's no point in me having that discussion. I'm not suggesting it or nor saying it. Looking forward to the program today. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News will be joining us next. Looking forward to that as always. We'll talk about all kinds of stuff. The Jim Harbaugh thing. I mean, he just loves to hang on to something. I mean, man, he's like a little dog. He chewing on your leg and won't let go. That I saw that tunnel thing. Yeah, I mean, the guy didn't get hurt, did he?
Did you see? Okay, but did you see the footage that was released yesterday?
Unless I've missed something.
There was the bigger issue was there's a tunnel. There's an ABC ESPN camera that shows one Michigan State player holding, I think it's Gmon Green, holding the Michigan player, and then another guy takes his helmet and swings and hits him twice, maybe 3 times, like full on swings his helmet at the player. So I was actually a little bit with you until I saw that video, and then all of a sudden, like,
I did not see that.
It just came out yesterday, so that made me sign with Jim Harbaugh.
All I saw was the one guy that they kind of had trapped in there, but he was scurrying about, and it was also a lot of pushing and shoving and all that stuff. But I did not see all that, and I absolutely will try to find that in the break. But let's hit a break as Mike DeCourcy joins us next here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Brought to you by our good friends from BB's Market, part of the WOW Club. Go to your Apple app or Google app store. Start earning WOW rewards today by signing up for the WOW Club. We'll be there on Friday at BB's, so you can come out and join us as well. Visit bbsmarket.com as well. Back right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Whether you're visiting...
If you ever revisit that Tom Allen conversation, I've got that clip uploaded.
Which clip is it?
Your question about finishing the season.
I also asked that to Chad.
Is the answer any different?
Well, I hope so. I mean, because it's and on him, it's the very first question, if that makes it easier.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll grab that here once we get back into
Chad.
the show. Where all Mike DeCourcy is.
Chad Wilt.
Chad Will.
Let's see. I'm trying to find that video.
There he is.
Here, I'll get it.
Good morning, Mr. Mike.
What's going on?
Good morning.
You know it. Just another day, baby. Living the dream. We were just perusing the Michigan State fracas. I did not see this other video that is out that apparently shows the one player holding the other player and the guy swinging the helmet.
Oh, I did not see that swinging helmet video.
That is a whole different what I saw. I saw the one guy that they kind of had, but nothing ever happened. It was a bunch of this, that. But Dustin said they had there's a video of one guy holding a player and another guy swinging a helmet at him.
Yeah, it's in the distance. Brad Golly is the one who had it. It was ESPN's.
What is that?
Was that me or?
No, that was me. That was the video on Twitter I'm trying to look at. It's ESPN has, it looks like he's swinging something.
Did Mike freeze up? I think he did.
I think he did.
Oh yeah, he's watching something.
All right, I'm gonna remove him. I'll keep him in the bot just to see when he comes back. But here we go.
Ask for Indiana Sports Beat Radio. This segment is brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back on this Tuesday. Hope you're having a good start to it's November 1st, isn't it? Good start to November. What better way to start that than with Mike DeCourcy? Mike brought us a 70-degree day today, man. So
It's all me.
he is. It's like he's like the Santa Claus of November. How is Mr. Mike doing?
I'm doing well, although I will complain publicly about the depressed turnout for Halloween last night. I had half our normal complement of children and or teens coming to the door for candy. So we were left with a truckload of candy. I'm not kidding. I mean, I love having candy around, but that would be bad for me.
Any extra Reese cups you can just send my way if you need to get those out of your house, Mike.
I do not buy stuff like that for that reason. If it is here, it will be consumed. There is without question.
So you don't give away any candy or what?
Well, no, where I live, there's not really kids anyway.
Oh, I see.
But I would, had I been home, but I was out at the Inside Indiana Basketball coaches show, so I was not here anyway. But yeah, Whew. I would always, if I were buying candy to give out, I'm going to be buying what I like. I'm going to be
right. That's
Reese
the problem.
cups.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you buy Reese cups, and I'd buy a whole bunch of those. But yeah, thank goodness didn't have to worry about that. But because it goes down, baby. Couple of things. The biggest thing right now is Michigan and Michigan State over the weekend had a fracas in the tunnel, and this is the second tunnel incident this season. They've been playing football there for 100 years at that stadium, however long since Rome, since the Romans came. And why are all of a sudden, why are these incidents all of a sudden, which I know I'm sure there's been one before, but then why don't they have a better way of doing that? The home team should go to their corner, sing the school song every game, and that should give the other team ample time to get off the field in the tunnel and out of the way. That problem solved.
Especially after a win, and Michigan hasn't been losing many home games lately. So I think you're right. I do think that that definitely the visiting team should be cleared out before the home team departs. At the very least, after all victories. And that was certainly the case here. Again, Michigan hasn't lost a home game, in the last 2 seasons, certainly. And then the year before that, we had the COVID thing. So there weren't a lot of people around. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure what happened. I was surprised by the fact that one player or 2 players somehow got separated from the group. I didn't really understand that and haven't really read anything that explains how that came to be. But I do think that, when you're right, that when you have a game in which the home team wins, when you share a tunnel, I don't think it's that difficult to make sure that the one group is cleared out before the second group departs the field of play.
Here's what irritates me about Jim Harbaugh, because this was mentioned by James.
Do we have enough time for this?
I'm going to try to keep it brief, but James Franklin expressed some concern I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago about this very issue. And Harbaugh just said, well, I have bigger fish to fry than worry about James Franklin's whining.
He blamed James Franklin.
He has a track record of kind of brushing things under the rug unless it is against his team or benefits his team or something along those lines. Like, I'm not saying, obviously, that assault is okay. You look at that video, it was that could have been a much uglier situation what unfolded at Michigan State. There was also some Michigan players who were instigating that situation by skipping up the tunnel, saying some things to the Michigan State players. Like, I don't understand why it just bothers me that you go for, you're surprised that this happens when it's been pointed out. There was video of what happened last year in the locker room between Ohio State and Michigan. This isn't a one, like it's a one-off that somebody could have been seriously hurt maybe, but this has been a continuing issue. So to just brush it off and then act so shocked that something like this of this magnitude happened in a rivalry game, it just bothers me because he seems to do this quite frequently.
Yeah, when you have a situation, when you have an arena, a stadium where the tunnel is shared, the entrance to the court or floor or ice, or there are different configurations in all of this, and in this case, a football field. It's rare that now that two teams share the same entranceway to a field of play. It's rare. Yeah. And I think even exiting is more problematic. But I'm not going to give any. I'm not going to put anything on the Michigan players who were taunting. They won, but they shouldn't have had. There shouldn't have been access to taunting, so to speak.
Right.
In the sense of, again, if you're going to share the field, the entrance. And you're talking about this isn't 11 soccer players marching out on the field, in unison, because you're talking about 200 kids, right. 200 young men, I should say. Or, if it were the case in a high school stadium, it would be kids, or, grown men if it were NFL. But there are 200 of them in this case, ballpark, nearly. And so you can't police all that. And that's why that you have to make sure that the groups are separate in one way or the other. And in most stadiums, they're separated by one enters on this end and the other enters on the other end. And in this case, they both enter through the same tunnel, so they have to enter separately. It's not that hard to arrange. The only occasion when it would be hard to arrange would be the case of a thunderstorm, a lightning type situation where everybody had to exit quickly. Otherwise, it's easy enough to make sure that one group exits and then the other one exits. And that didn't happen here, obviously. And then you wind up with a problem. I don't think it's inevitable that you have a problem every time two teams exit a field simultaneously and through the same place. I don't think that's inevitable, but it's certainly possible. And so why allow it to occur?
Yeah, and then now there have been so many instances, Mike, in the past that where we're like, oh wow, I'm surprised that guy doesn't get arrested for that, because incidents that happen, whether it's on the field, on the court, in the stands, but it's never really gotten to that. Sports has been able to keep a buffer around things that happen on the field of play and criminal action. Now you've got Jim Harbaugh saying he wants criminal charges filed, and the father of the player who was apparently hit, Gamon Green, has hired attorney Tom Mars to follow through with action on this, which that could set a precedent, a bad precedent for sports, for college sports, I think.
Well, I think the one thing I'll say about that is that I'm happy that that it's a question, in the sense of, like, if it had gone maybe a little bit longer, it would have not been a question. It would not, so I'm pleased that the young man was able to get out of there before it got really bad. And it could have gotten really bad based on the volume of athletes that were surrounding him and his position at one point. It could have been really bad. And the way he was able to get out of there, and that's all the evidence that I have is his escape, is that it looks like it didn't get really bad. And so I'm pleased by that. I have seen athletes in other sports, other circumstances, be attacked and become injured, significantly, and no criminal charges enter the arena in that circumstance. So I'm not sure whether what happened, like I said, if it had gone a little farther or in another direction and been allowed to persist, I think it might have been almost mandatory. But I'm not sure whether that's the case now, because he was able to get out of there for, I'd have to watch the video again and break it down how he was able to get out. But as I said, it could have been really bad, and it looked awful, and it certainly shouldn't happen. But it doesn't appear that the young man was severely injured by what occurred, and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, luckily that was the case. Let's see. Moving forward, you guys have just, well, I'll save that for the next segment. We move forward in college football. The college football playoffs poll comes out. The first one comes out tonight. I'm like, okay, let me guess. What was the old Johnny Carson thing that he did?
Karnak, magnificent. Yes.
What is a bulldog, a volunteer, a Wolverine, and a Buckeye? Oh yeah, the top 4 of the college football playoffs.
Yeah, well, the blessed thing about that is that 2 of those teams will play. All 4 of those teams will play each other. Georgia will play Tennessee. Ohio State will play Michigan. And so some of that logjam will be resolved.
Hence, that does bring up the argument, though, Mike. If these were the 4 best teams and they knock one of them, knock the other one off prior to, and so then you get a top 4 that is sub what the best 4 is. It's now you've really got the top 6. I know. I know. That's why I like the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, because
let the best survive.
Yeah, because what will happen is that the winner between it's not inevitable because there's also the conference championship game in both, but likely the winner of Georgia, Tennessee, and almost certainly the winner of Ohio State, Michigan will then win the Big Ten Conference Champion and the SEC Conference Championship. And then they would, under the 12-team playoff, they would automatically qualify and probably as top 4 seeds. And so then there wouldn't be this consternation about, well, what does Clemson have to do? I mean, they've won every game. Their league actually, although perception-wise it's not viewed as great, there's some stats that are pretty impressive in support of ACC success this season. You don't look out and see a ton of SEC out of conference achievement. I mean, there's not that much there. The Georgia win over the Georgia destruction, I should say, of Oregon would be the exception to that. But other than that, it's not overwhelming. And I could say the same about Ohio State as well. I mean, it wasn't their fault that they scheduled Notre Dame, and Notre Dame turns out to be at best mediocre. They tried, but I have a friend, Brian Snow, who's now on the staff at Penn State and he used to work for 24/7 Sports as a recruiting analyst, and he's on the Penn State basketball staff now. And he had the best quote, for teams that had great records but bad schedules, they'd try to play good teams and then those teams would have bad years, and he'd say, "It's not your fault, but it's your problem." So that's what you could say about this circumstance. So and then TCU as well, another undefeated team playing very well. So, I think that all of that would be resolved if we had an actual playoff and not an invitational in which people try to answer the question, Jim, that you just did. Are they the best? Well, no one knows. I mean, you can't know unless somebody plays somebody. And on most of those teams, the best team that Tennessee played out of conference was probably Pitt. And Pitt gave him a game, and now Pitt's 4-4. Well, so is Tennessee that good? Well, I mean, they look pretty good when they beat the heck out of Kentucky, and when they beat Alabama. But again, it's just a guess, and I don't believe that sports should ever come down to just a guess.
Not only is it just a guess, but it seems to me that the SEC seems to get a pass every year in terms of, well, this team's really good. This team's this conference is incredibly deep. Kentucky, I believe, I'm going to have to double check on this, at 5-3 and just got spanked by Tennessee, still received votes in the AP poll. Maryland at 6-2 with a controversial 2-point loss to Purdue and a road loss to Michigan was behind them in the receiving votes category, I believe. So I don't know. The issue for me with the 4 best teams is there's always this conversation about should it be the best 4 teams, which you have, as you said, Mike, you're going to have no idea really who that is, or should it be the 4 most deserving teams? And I feel like this committee flip-flops on how
that word deserving really catches my ear every time.
How about accomplished? You always use the word accomplished. How do you like that word?
There you go. That'll work.
I mean, you can make some sort of value judgment about what a team has done, who they've beaten, etc. How, maybe if you wish to include it, how they've beaten them. But just looking at a team and saying, well, they're the best, well, how do you know that? Well, right. Because, they've got 5 first-round draft choices or whatever. I can tell you that a year ago, people looked at Cincinnati and said they weren't great because of the league they played in. And then, and they won every game they played. And then they went on draft day and they had, I think, the 3rd most players selected in the NFL draft, including the number 4 overall pick, who's killing it for the Jets. So it's perception is twisted. It comes to you not in the form of truth, but in the form of long held biases. And Dustin, you mentioned about the SEC in the past they get. I'm telling you, they schedule because they know they can. In the SEC, they'll tell you, well, I have to schedule my non-conference games lightly because look at what I have to play. That's their excuse, and that's fine. But at no point do they ever establish, other than the very best teams and what they've been able to do in the playoff, at no point do they ever establish the superiority. It's just assumed.
Right.
The top 4 teams that will likely be announced tonight, as I said, Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee, Michigan, both, as you mentioned, not only do they play each other, that means one of those teams from each of those conferences cannot play in the conference championship game.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's true for both. The Georgia-Tennessee winner will play for the SEC title, and the Michigan-Ohio State winner, almost certainly. I mean, we're presuming victories, but with the way the season has gone, that seems pretty safe. If with Georgia not being challenged very often, Tennessee, just blew through one of the best teams in their division, or one of the most accomplished teams in their division, maybe. And the same is true of Ohio State and Michigan. So you're likely going to see the winner of each of those games play in their conference championship game. In the case of the SEC, they'll have to most likely play Alabama. In the case of the Big Ten, West, right now, Illinois has played very well, but I don't think they're viewed as a significant challenger to the Michigan-Ohio State winner. We'll see how it goes. You have to play the game.
Illinois, what's their record? 6 in Indiana?
7 in Indiana.
They're 7 in Indiana. Oh, wow. That is if they finish the season before the Big Ten, if let's say they make it to the Big Ten championship,
right?
If they make it to the Big Ten championship, 11 in Indiana, that is going to be the craziest. That has to be the craziest stat of the college football season.
Biggest upset.
Yeah, in retrospect, maybe. Yeah, absolutely. It's surprising the way the season has gone based on Indiana's success in that game. That Illinois has recovered to be consistently good enough to win, and give Brett Bielema credit for what he's been able to accomplish there, because they've played a lot of teams. A lot of the teams in the in the Big Ten West are like Illinois. I mean, they're all kind of, you look at them and they don't seem like there's that much of a separator, but Illinois finds a way to finish on top every week. And that's kind of the object of the game, man, is to win the games that you play, not to necessarily impress the people in that room, but to win every game that you can. And right now they've done that.
We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Fortunate to have the great Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News with us right now. Make sure you give him a follow if you don't already, and go to the Sporting News for complete coverage on all things sporting. We're back with more. We'll talk about the basketball season as another magazine I won't mention. I saw a thing out this morning that Indiana was picked as potentially the most disappointing team. But don't get alerted, fans, because Kansas and North Carolina were right behind them. So it's just one of those polls. But lots more to get to right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Golfers, here's the deal. Basketball. When's the first trip you have to make up north?
I don't have my schedule yet, so still waiting for that. I suspect in January, but I'm not sure yet.
Oh, wow. That's cool. But you drive up there every time, I imagine.
No. I fly most of the times. I do not like driving across northern Indiana.
In January, baby.
January and February, not my favorite thing.
No, hell
I
no.
did it a couple of times last year because of weather caused flight issues, and it's not fun. It's a couple hours of heck.
Yeah, it's like driving through Kansas. With cold. It's cold, Kansas doesn't get
the wind. They don't have those wind farms up there for no reason in Northwest Indiana.
I'm telling you,
they're there for a reason.
I'm a Southern Indiana boy. We got all those hills and knobs, and which is actually worse to drive on, but at least we got wind. It blocks the wind at least. Man, there's nothing up there but corn blowing.
Yep.
Corn stalks. Old corn stalks.
When I drove up to Chicago in May, I'd never, driven up that way before. And so seeing all those wind farms was weird to see because they're all over the place, especially in Illinois.
There's that stretch of 65 where, I mean, there are windmills for literally as far as you can see on that one stretch. And that, I worry about that relative to the, if there's snow, it blows across and, it's not fun. So I have flown nearly all the trips I've made there in 13 prior years. So, and it also is those 6 hours too on an already crazy work week can be pretty rough too.
Yeah.
There you go.
Mike, are you going to, I assume not to either Vegas or Kansas?
No, no. I'll be at the Champions Classic a week from tonight, right? Holy cow.
Where is that?
Man,
where's that being played?
Tonight.
Here in Indy.
Oh, in Indy.
Yeah.
All right, here. Ooh, the mouse is going out. Here we go.
Honda, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer. Get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. It is Tuesday. I hope you're having a good start to your week. Appreciate you tuning in. Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Jim Coyle with you as always, along with Dustin Schutte as well from Outsider.com. We're joined by Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News. Senior writer there. Make sure you give him a follow and go to the Sporting News for coverage. I'm actually talking about another magazine right now that I saw had a story out. It was The Athletic. They did a poll of their writers. Seth Davis, Iman Brennan, let's see, Justin Williams, Austin Meek, Sam Vicini, Joe Rexroad, let's see anybody else, Tobias Bass, Brian Hamilton, Dane O'Neill, Kyle Tucker, Brian Bennett, lots of different writers. And they were trying to, the poll was, who do you think is going to be the most disappointing team this season? And Indiana won that with 4 votes. But don't fear too much, Indiana fans, because right behind them with 3 votes each were Kansas and North Carolina. So this is, and then Duke was a couple spots below that. These are the guys are just saying, well, like Seth Davis says, Hoosier fans are starving so badly for a winner that I fear this team is bound to disappoint them. He loves Trace Jackson Davis, and Race Thompson is one of his favorite glue guys, but he does not trust Xavier Johnson as a full-time point guard. And the Big Ten has plenty of good teams. If the Hoosiers lose momentum or suffer an injury or two, they could go downhill in a hurry. I do agree with the Xavier Johnson part, and I think a lot of people thought that the freshmen were going to be the question mark. I still think that Xavier Johnson might be the question mark.
I got some guff on Twitter last week for there was an article in the Indy Star that Matt Glenesk, who's the sports editor at the Star, tweeted out, and he said, it's obvious what the number one question facing the Hoosiers is, and so I'm like, yeah, whether Xavier Johnson can be a championship point guard, because that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about whether he can be a good player. I mean, he's been a good player here and there for bad teams at Pitt and for a okay team last year at Indiana. We're talking about
showed at the end of the season how good he could be.
Yeah, so he's been good. He's been a good player, but can he be a championship point guard? So anyway, I opened up the story from the Star, and I think it was written by Zach Osterman. And the biggest question that was cited was 3-point shooting, and I'm like, "Ooh, I got that one wrong." And I put it on Twitter that I got it wrong, and so then Matt asked me what I thought, and I said, can Xavier Johnson be a championship point guard? And look, I understand that Jalen Hood-Schifino has point guard ability and that he could, take over in a pinch or whatever. But team dynamics are a factor. And if you're having to replace your senior point guard with a freshman, I mean, what are the odds that you're going to be the number 7 team in the country, like Sporting News just predicted today, or that you're going to win the Big Ten championship like the Big Ten writers predicted back a month ago? That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about whether or not they can be good. They're going to be good, but can they be a league champion? And they finish like if Purdue somehow goes 15 and 15, and Purdue and Indiana finishes 14-6, or 16 and 4, and Indiana goes 15 and 5. I mean, they've still been a championship level team, whether they did it or not. But that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about not going 13 and 7 and then losing in the second round of the NCAAs. That's what they're trying to avoid. And so Xavier Johnson, what I've been saying all along through this winter, especially when you go from February being benched for a curfew violation, and then does that solve everything? Do we straighten ourselves out? No, we have the incident in April. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being a consistent leader, winner person through the entirety of the college basketball season. That's what he has to do. He has to be someone that they can rely upon to be there, to be, and being there means not getting benched at Northwestern and not having this circumstance from April. That's what being there means. And so he has to do that. And then he has to play winning basketball, not just on, the biggest night or whatever, or half of the Michigan game. He's got to do it. And look, everybody's going to have bad games, but he's got to be a consistent winning player day after day after day in practice, night after night after night in games. And if he's that, everything that we suspect Indiana can achieve, they can achieve. And that's why I cited that. I got heck on Twitter from Jalen's uncle, Drew, who was from Pittsburgh and played at West Virginia. I got from some fans, but that's my point. I'm not saying that they don't have skilled point guards. I know they do, because I've seen Xavier do it, and I know that Jalen can. But it doesn't work if Xavier fails or struggles, and then Jalen has to take over. You're not likely then to be the championship level team that people are hoping for, and in some cases, many cases, expecting.
To that point, there was a comment that was made yesterday, and I didn't get to weigh in on this, but one of our viewers said that Xavier Johnson won't win you any games, but he can lose you some games. And I kind of understand that premise, but I think he can win you a lot of games.
Absolutely.
I think, and I'm going to say this, but it's not on the same level scale, so bear with me. I think he can be a Carson Edwards, Ayo Dosunmu type of player, in that he could go out, I feel like, on any given night and put up 25 or 30 points. And he could overcorrect for a lot of things. But with that, I think he can also be very inconsistent. There's going to be with high volume shooters, which I think he is proving to be. You're going to have some nights where you go 1 for 12. You're going to have some nights where you're 4 for 15. Can he do other things on the floor when he's not shooting well? Because I think that's been an issue. When he's not shooting the ball well, he's played out of control, and that's where he costs Indiana some games. That's where I think he might have some issues. I just think there's going to be some inconsistency there throughout the course of the season. And I'm just interested to see, maybe his game has changed. Maybe Mike Woodson has reined it in, and it's hard to take this from a 1-game sample size, but what was he, Jim? 2 for 11 the other night?
2 for 11.
Something? Yeah. I just think that he's going to have some of those nights. Everybody is.
Well,
but it's magnified
okay,
when you're a point
like you said,
guard.
everybody is, but
right.
It wasn't nice it wasn't exactly reassuring to see it on the very first night, especially when everyone else, because if you take that off, Indiana as a team probably shot about 65%. Everyone else, Jalen Hood-Schifino was 5 of 8. Logan Duncan was 5 of 8. Of course, he's a big guy. CJ Gunn was 2 of 5, including 2 of 3 from behind the arc. So, yeah, that 2 of 11 goes exactly to where I think that when things aren't going well, that he has a tendency to press things, and that's where that gets outside of the flow of the team. And that's the one thing this team looked very good at to me the other night, even though they didn't have Trace Jackson Davis and Tamar Bates. They looked very in sync with each other. I
think he's got to learn that there are certain numbers that they can't afford, and especially when you're surrounded now by talented players. I mean, now that you've added Malik Reneau and Jalen Hood-Schifino, I mean, you have the ability to be playing with 3 5-star guys at once. That's not been the case in the program for a while. And I don't know that will be the case often. I mean, but there'll be certainly there'll be times when he's out there with Jalen and Malik and Trace, if Race is on the bench for a period of time. So you're talking about playing with 3 5-star guys. You're talking about playing with Race, who's a proven college basketball player now. There shouldn't be many 5 of 15s or 3 of 12s, because okay, it's not dropping. All right, I got other things I can do, and I know that I can get the ball to those guys who, maybe they're having a good night. If he's going 5 for 15, then everybody else ought to be worse, because now you're doing it because no one else is doing it. And that shouldn't happen very often. He's got to learn and he's got to execute the idea that look, there are going to be some 2 for 9s.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because, you shouldn't not shoot. But at a certain point, if it's not dropping for you, you can't go 2 for 12. You can't go 2 for 15 or 3 for 15. And that's something that a lot of college basketball players who are high usage players struggle with. If you look at his game logs for last year, you'll see that in some of those games, I mean, he went when he played against Wyoming in the NCAA tournament, he was only 3 for 12, but he also had 7 assists. And he got 5 free throws in that game and converted 3. So he's there, he's high usage, but he's also involving his teammates. To be a great college point guard, again, like go 3 of 9 and get that assist up to 8 assists instead of wasting 3 possessions on shots that it's not your night to make. And I think that's something that he's going to have to learn. And now you have the ability to move Schifino over for minutes at a time. And maybe if it has to be the coach that enforces it, he has to be the one to say, if you're going to keep doing this, I'm going to have to play Jalen. That's how another way to govern that. A year ago, you're playing him 36, 33, 32 minutes because you don't have any other options to get the ball up and get you into the offense. Now you do. And so that may be a way as well of enforcing that and getting him to buy into that habit of understanding that if this isn't your night and if 4 of your first 5 shots don't drop, then at that point, you've got to say, okay, let's get everybody else involved and maybe I can get free for a layup and that'll get me going again. but you can't sit there and push yourself to 3 of 12, 3 of 13, just because you can't think of anything else to do. Well, now the coach can say, okay, you can't think of anything else to do. I've got a freshman who's got great skill who can do this.
Yeah, last year was the most games he had played in his career in a season by 134 games. He averaged 28 minutes a game. He shot 40% from the floor and surprisingly 38% from behind the arc. And I think a lot of that came at the end of the season when he got a little more comfortable and started playing a little more within himself in the confines. But he averaged 5 assists a game. That's a solid stat line for a guy that's a senior that you're looking at going, wow, this is going to be awesome. But they have to all work together, and that's the thing that in watching that team the other night, I saw a lot of in syncness, like I said. But of course, you've got Malik Renew and Jalen Hood-Schifino, who have played in high school together. But this team looked pretty in sync, although they were missing a couple of pieces. So again, it's hard to address that in its totality. But to me, they looked good, although it was against an NAIA team. It has to be encouraging to see Logan Duncombe come in and get a double-double, even though, again, it's against an NAIA team. But, this is your third option off in his position.
Yeah, let me reiterate that I really respect Xavier's talent. I mean, I remember, I have, because of growing up in Pittsburgh and covering Pitt. So I had an eye on him early on. I saw one of his early practices, visited the practice to talk to Jeff Capel and to watch him go. And there's real talent there. I mean, there was talk in Pittsburgh after, during his freshman year, how long is he going to be here? Not in the sense of, is he going to leave for Indiana, but is he going to leave for the NBA? And so I think that you have to remember there's real ability there. But again, it comes down to, how does he execute? How does he use the ability that he has? And if he does, if he has a great year, Indiana's going to be terrific. I mean, it's that simple, because everything else is in place for them to be really good. The shooting is an issue, but you can work around that. They're going to score points. And Xavier himself is, as you mentioned, 38%. You'll take that every day from any player that you have, with the exception of JJ Redick. I mean, 38% is a great percentage from 3-point range. So he's got ability to make shots as well as get into the lane and draw the defense to himself and kick it out, or kick it or drop it down to race or trace. He's got real ability. And so I'm excited to see what he becomes this year. I think he has a chance to be an all-league point guard, but it's really up to him as much as anybody. It's up to Xavier how great he wants to be.
Yeah, I think that players can get a little too focused on, especially ones like Xavier. He's a senior. He wants to win, but he also wants to show his game off. He wants to go to the next level. And I think sometimes they get lost in understanding of the best way of showing your game off is within the framework of what your team is doing, instead of stepping outside of that. I'm not saying that he is doing that, but just that has got to be something that he has to be aware of. And the fact that, Jalen Hood-Schifino, there's already been talk of how long is he going to be here. So not wanting to be overshadowed by Jalen Hood-Schifino.
Well, I mean, he's the quarterback. You're going to get credit if Indiana is in the Final Four, say, and I'm not predicting that, but I mean, if they make the Final Four, the guy who had the ball in his hands most of the time is going to get a ton of the credit. Now, he's not going to get as much as Trace, because they certainly won't be a Final Four team without Trace having a first-team All-America season. But he'll get a ton of credit, and the NBA will look at him in a better light than they do now. And the NBA does not want to see a point guard trying to show off his game. They want to see a point guard who's going to do what he's asked to do. How do you think TJ McConnell is making millions? It's because he knows how to play. It's because he's really quick, and he makes shots, and he does what he's asked to do. And Xavier Johnson certainly has the ability and the physicality to be a point guard who makes money in the NBA. But it comes down to that, how singular is your vision toward trying to win? How devoted are you to that? And if he shows that, he's going to get a shot, second round pick, summer league tryout, whatever it is, he's going to get a shot. But if he goes out and does a lot of Dustin's 3 of 15s, they're not going to be interested in that. They don't, you're playing with LeBron or you're playing with Kevin Durant. They know you're not supposed to be the one shooting. They just wanted you to get him the ball.
I'm glad you mentioned TJ. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just going to make sure we get to, before Mike has to go, the Sporting News has their top 25 out, preseason top 25. Kentucky at the top spot, North Carolina in the second spot, Gonzaga, Houston, UCLA, Baylor, and Indiana in the seventh spot, Duke 8, Arkansas 9th, and Kansas rounding out the top 10. Indiana, most people have had them within the top 15. You guys put them in the top 10. Want to hear your thoughts on that, and I'm sure Indiana fans are happy to see that. But the reason that you guys thought that they were just a little bit better than some of the other
I think it starts with trace and race. I mean, how many teams have that kind of reliability in their front court? They know they're going to rebound. They know they're going to guard. They know they can score in multiple ways. That's a lot, and I don't know that that everybody has given that credit. I do acknowledge that the shooting is a concern, but you do have guys who can make shots. I mean, Miller Kopp can make shots, and we just talked about Xavier. Jalen, if he wants to be a pro, is going to have to make shots. I mean, you're not going to get in because you're 6'5" and can handle. You got to be able to make shots. So all those guys have the ability, and we'll see whether Trace adds that to his game or not. We know he's worked really hard at it, but we have only had limited opportunities to see what he's done in that department. And they've got a good group of reserves, so they're going to have to figure out a rotation. Somebody is probably not going to have to not play that isn't a bad player because it's hard to play. It's hard to play 10 guys. And we saw that with Purdue last year, where it became, really a burden that they had to play 10 guys. So somebody's probably going to have to not play. That's a decent player or better. But it's good to have options to figure out who that player, who the best 10 or the best 9 or best 8.5 are. So I like everything about that. The question again comes down to shooting. It comes down to point guard play. But I decided that, that the leadership that Trace and Race have, I don't think they came back to not do the things that they want to do. And if X becomes someone who is totally on board beginning to end, then they don't have to step out and say anything. But if he starts to waver, I think that they can do that. I think they can say, okay, man, we spent a whole year here because we want to be on the top of the podium in Chicago, or we want to have a banner raising ceremony at the end of the regular season in Assembly Hall for the Big Ten title, or we want to get to Houston, whatever it might be. And we're not tolerating this. I think they have the ability to do that. And I think that's where I wouldn't surprise me if X is all in from day one. And also wouldn't surprise me that if he starts to wander a little bit, that those guys get him back on the path.
We'll certainly find out. And you can find that at the Sporting News. It's free content to get there. Make sure you're giving Mike a follow. As that is out. That's just today, right? Just came out?
Just dropped this morning. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's
fresh
off the press, man.
Fresh as it comes.
Yeah, so get in there and give that a read and all the other great stuff that Mike has. Mike, I cannot thank you enough, man.
Pleasure, Jim and Dustin. As always, we'll see you guys next week. It'll be college hoop season.
I cannot wait. Everyone else is looking forward to it as well. Mike DeCourcy, senior writer from the Sporting News. Like I said, make sure you give him a follow. Go the top 25 for the Sporting News is out now. We got lots more coming up, and we're back with it right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Andy Moore.
Hey, I think I said the Champions Classic is next week. I think I said that just to it's 2 weeks from today. It's on the 15th. So if you could correct me at some point, that'd be good.
I will do that, and I'm
All right.
pull that.
I wasn't able to ask this on the air. This is behind the scenes YouTube. Mike, this is going to be the most controversial take. So if you don't want to answer, I totally understand. November 1st, Christmas music, yes, no.
Yeah, I don't think you need 2 whole months. There's so much good Christmas music now that I can get why people are. I think if you start drifting it in, or Thanksgiving week, the weekend before, I can live with that.
Yep.
I think November 1st is rushing it. Absolutely.
The only other exception would be if it were to snow today, which it's not going to.
The only song would be available then is "I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas." That's the only appropriate song for that. But I agree with Mike 100%.
Well, sometime when it's appropriate, once we're allowed to listen to Christmas music, we'll have to have a discussion over what's the best Christmas record.
I'm listening to it this afternoon. I'm fired up.
So you're all in. You're all in.
I keep up the fall decorations, and then I've got I listen to Christmas jazz, so I don't go into the jingles and that sort of stuff.
That's not bad.
So I feel like it's a good compromise.
Christmas jazz. So do you have the GRP Christmas collection by any chance? Is that among your albums?
What is it?
Called the GRP Christmas collection?
I don't have that. I
actually have that one up. It's good.
I will look that up. I have the Peanuts Charlie Brown Christmas on vinyl.
Vince Guaraldi.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love his stuff.
Yes. Cool.
That's hilarious. Oh my!
I will see you gentlemen later.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you.
Mike.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, I love Dustin. Dustin keeps us weird.
Well, he did the Halloween question yesterday, and now he's got the Christmas question today.
No, I'm not. I love it. I wish that I would have been able to get that question in. We went too long. I had to get the top 25 stuff in.
And I didn't want to ask it after we had talked about that. So
it's okay. YouTube behind the scenes content. Here we go.
0961. Cheryl Sizemore from Remax Advanced Realty. Let Cheryl Sizemore get you in the home you want today. Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com.
This segment is brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. I hope you're having a great Tuesday. It's going to be pretty nice here today. Looking at the forecast, and all I see is sunshine with a high. Well, damn, they lowered it to 66. It was supposed to have been 70. But that's okay because Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 72, 73, 73. Hello. And then on Saturday, you got a 57% chance of precipitation. Is Indiana on the road this week? Damn.
Don't they host Penn State?
Oh, that's right. That's this week. Yep. Too many schedules now.
I know. It's tough to keep it in check.
Boy, that'll just stink. At least it's going to be 70 degrees, so at least it won't be cold on Saturday, even if it were to rain. It's going to be in the 70s all the way through Monday. It looks
warm
like
November
in this area, central Indiana right now, as I'm perusing down through there. All the way and until Wednesday the 9th when it drops. I'll take it. Take whatever we can get, right?
That's right. I think it's going to be like 80s here every day.
I think it's going to be like 80s here.
We're starting to approach the chilly season. It's going to get the low 80s, high 70s.
Whatever. No World Series last night. Yesterday, we met with Tom Allen, and the coordinators. And one of the things I asked Tom is, there's 4 games left. What is it that he needs to see to know that they're making progress? These last 4 games, I didn't say this. Obviously, I don't see them salvaging the season and becoming bowl eligible. I didn't say that, but you can still find progress. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I think step one is to be able to consistently execute our fundamentals and our techniques. That includes schematic execution, the consistency there, continuing to see the growth from our younger players that we're playing to our older guys that are still, having to make plays for us. That consistency is never going to cease to be a priority for us. It was last week. It's got to be this week. And I think, to me, it's about coming out of the second half and finishing, and I think that's something that we didn't do in our last couple of games, that we had opportunities to do that. And even though our conference games have come down to the fourth quarter, we haven't found enough ways to make plays to finish those games the way we want them to. So just want to see that fight, that finish, the execution at those critical times. And so that's never going to cease to be a priority, and continue to, make changes. We got to make changes, whatever we got to do schematically, personnel-wise, what do we need to do to be able to get ourselves in that position. So, and you just want to see younger guys develop as well. Some guys are going to get opportunities because of some guys being dinged up and already have had those. And I want to see them rise up and have a great finish to the 2022 season.
Yeah, they see some guys play, give guys opportunities. You find this is where sometimes you find those hidden jewels. When you have some guys dinged up that can't go, or you need to find something different. Been wanting to see Josh Henderson with the ball a lot more this year. I still don't understand why that has not manifested itself. You see what happens when you got the ball in the hands of Jalen Lucas. Bang. I mean, so.
And on top of that, you got to remember too that we're at a point in the season where there's not a lot of, I would call, winnable games left on the schedule. I mean, you could probably put Michigan State there. Maybe you can put Purdue, because I think their defense is showing some weaknesses. You're probably not going to beat Penn State. You're probably not going to beat Ohio State. So you're just looking for positive moments there. But this is important to remember. This is the final 4-game stretch. That 4-game redshirt rule now, if you've got some guys that you want to see what they can do, put them on the field. What have you got to lose? See what they can do. See if you can create some depth. See if you can create some momentum. Get them some live repetitions. I'm not suggesting you throw in the towel on the season and just give up, but I think that you're at a point in the season where the last 5 games, not a lot has worked. So you got to try to figure something out. And if that means getting some of those young guys some reps, putting them in spots, especially on the offensive line, especially in the secondary, I think you do it. Take advantage of that 4-game redshirt rule. Try some different things. You had an off week to try to get some things corrected, get some guys healthy. But I just think you haven't had much work the last 5 weeks. Try something different. Get some new guys in there. Get some experience so you can get some momentum. Maybe towards the latter part of the season, maybe you can beat Michigan State. Maybe you can win the Old Oaken Bucket and then propel yourself, give yourself some momentum heading into the offseason and then into the 2022 season, or 2023, excuse me.
Absolutely. Guys like Omar Cooper might get a chance to step up after with Cam Camper going down and being lost for the remainder of the season. And that was announced yesterday as knee injury is going to take him out. So it's going to give some other guys a chance. And Camper has been the guy on the receiving end of Connor Bazelak's passes for the most part. But that's another thing. The starting quarterback is unknown. It will be announced on Saturday. So we're back to that again, which I think that is, I'm going to be honest, I think that's a little bit ridiculous at this stage of the game.
Yep.
You've already went through that whole process to start the year by keeping the media out of the practices and using that, which I was fine. I'm like, okay, you use whatever advantage you can get, but it's 8 games into the seasons this week 9, 7, whatever.
Yeah, it'd be heading into week 9 or 10. I don't know what it is. Most teams have played. All the buys are out, so this will be everybody's 9th game in the Big Ten.
I assume this is just gamesmanship with Penn State in hopes that it gets them some kind of an advantage. But why you would even say that if Connor Bazelak is not going to be starting, that's ridiculous to me. So, but then on the other side of this coin, are you starting a quarterback who has already made his intentions known that he is transferring? He's hitting the portal. So this is a completely weird situation.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean Jack Tuttle's going to be the guy. Maybe it could be. I'm drawing a blank right now.
Dexter Williams.
On it. Dexter Williams. Hell, it could be me. You never know.
Penn State's looking in good. They're hoping
we got to take a break.
First snap.
Well, that's right. Hey, Chronic Hoosier is going to join us next. He can tell us. Maybe he knows. Maybe it's him. We don't know. Hey, we got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends at Better Works Brewing Company, located in the old Function Brewery location, right off the square in Bloomington, catty corner to Cabello Restaurant. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Hey, this is John.
I'm all for the why not let Dexter Williams go in there and sling it around?
Yeah.
It's like Dustin said, what do you have to lose?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see if that's what we see.
Yep.
I'd say I think it's going to piss a lot of people off if it's Tuttle.
It would,
if they weren't pissed already.
It would piss a lot of people on that sideline off, I can tell you that.
Yeah. It almost seems like the dagger in the season if you do something like that, just in terms of morale, you know.
Right. I agree.
Honestly, it's no different than the Hiller situation, though. At this point, Tom Allen made his bed. Sleep in it.
Yep.
I'm dead ass serious, though. I'm dead ass serious on that. You chose, you chose Bazelak for a reason. I can't imagine that anybody behind him is getting that much better over the course of the season, getting, lesser reps in practice. As more and more guys are being held out, in load management, whatever. Anything at this point, it's either desperation or you're just you're throwing the season away and just preparing for next year. Which maybe that's not a bad idea at this point, but honestly, there are a lot of choices that led to this point, and now you get to reap what you've sown.
I agree with that. Yes, 100%.
Hails to the L's.
I mean.
But that's to me what the Hiller decision was, is you knew exactly what you were signing up for when you chose to retain him. And nothing changed. So to me, that was kind of scapegoating. That was kind of a desperate move. But what it wasn't is effective, representing any kind of foresight that, changing nothing would somehow result in different outcomes. And yet here we are. So I don't know. All I do know is kind of like those gas tanks at the VP on West 3rd. The tank of goodwill is empty.
Here we go.
Now, there is a limited number of memberships available, so go to eaglepoint.com right now and get yours today.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. It is Tuesday. That means Chronic Hoosiers is joining us. How's it going, man?
It's going. Glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure. So let's see. You were with us last week, right?
I was for the first time in a minute.
I was going to say, I knew we had taken off the week before that. We had Dane on. And then now we've had the first basketball game of sorts, even though it was an exhibition game. Got to see not everyone, but got to see a lot of the people that the fans have been wanting to. Jalen Hood-Schifino, Malik Reneau. That is the pronunciation of his name, by the way, Malik Reneau. I've got to keep telling myself that. But I from a media standpoint, I liked what I saw from that Indiana team, Chronic. They look like they have solved a lot of woes, and they're ahead of where they were last year. This time, that's a fact.
Oh, no doubt whatsoever. It's always one of those tread with caution type situations. Looking at exhibition games against NAIA teams, but at the end of the day, I felt I felt great just to be able to watch IU basketball again, because I'm not going to lie, we've reached the point in the football season where my soul needs that. It needs the pivot. It needs something to be happy about, and happy I was, man. I feel like we're looking at probably the best freshman class of newcomers as a whole, and I guess we kind of have to reevaluate how we look at classes now with the portal and everything else, and the way that's shaping programs. The new guys look good, man. They looked really good. I feel like we're looking at perhaps one of the strongest recruiting classes Indiana's had, going back to OG, Jawan, Thomas Bryant. I just felt like there was a lot of promise on display there. Hood-Schifino he's got a bag, man. I don't know how else to describe it. Watching him play, he looked to me possibly like the best guard Indiana's seen since Victor Oladipo left. And Reneau, I felt like fit in seamlessly in place of Trace Jackson Davis. The offense moved. It was creative. It was a lot of things, and it was a lot of good things. But all the way down the line, I felt like CJ Gunn looked like he's absolutely going to be somebody, maybe not immediately, maybe not big minutes, but I think it's somebody that you're going to see grow and progress and become a bigger contributor throughout the season. It was great seeing Trey Galloway back in form. Logan Duncan obviously was rather effective. Now, I feel like that as you get from the backcourt into the front court, that caveat about, lesser opponents maybe gets a little bit more heightened, just because of the mismatches that are on display there. But I thought like he looked like he'd made some pretty significant strides. His body looks markedly different. His confidence, Race was everything we thought he would be. I think X reminded me that, progress is not always a linear thing. And that's perhaps something to keep in mind as the season gets started. I still think he's going to be an integral part of Indiana's success or failure this season. But, remembering where X started last year, we're back in the same boat now. While he's got a little bit more experience under him, there's far more expectations upon him. So recognizing that there's probably going to be some twists and some turns in that progression. But all in all, I felt like this was an Indiana team that put a lot of different pieces on the floor that offer a lot of different attributes that bring a lot of different talents. And, the chemistry, the ball movement looked pretty good for this part of the year. And, as we should expect with the Mike Woodson coach team, the defense was pretty darn effective as well. So all that being said, take it with a grain of salt, because it's Marion, it's NAIA, right. But it's on the books. It doesn't count. But I felt like it left me feeling pretty good about the prospects for what's ahead for the Hoosiers.
And I think the thing that stood out to me, Chronic, and again, like you said, it's a 1-game sample size, but it's all we have to go on. It's an exhibition. The comfortability for Race Thompson to step out behind the 3-point line and knock down 3 of 4, for CJ Gunn to play in basically his first game in Assembly Hall and knock down 2 of 3 from behind the 3-point line. I mean, I think there's a comfortability and a confidence. I talked about it in the offseason. It seems like Mike Woodson is allowing these players to kind of be themselves and be comfortable with who they are. And under the previous regime, I don't necessarily know that that was the case. And I think it's translated to some confidence on the court. Now, that's not to say they can't have a bad game here or there or have some struggling nights shooting the basketball. But I think what you saw was a team that is very comfortable in their own skin, per se. And I think that confidence now is translating to the basketball court. At least it did in that first exhibition.
No, absolutely. I mean, what really sticks out as I look back at it, I rewatched the game again on Sunday, running an offensive set designed to get Race Thompson a 3-pointer off the catch.
I'm sorry, dude. Can you repeat that?
I mean, that actually happened though. And the stroke was clean, and he drilled it, nothing but net. And I think one thing to remember, this time last year, Mike Woodson was very, very openly explaining that the offense was not even a work in progress. It was taking a admitted back seat to getting the defense that he wanted on the floor. And I don't think that was a bad strategy by any means, considering all the liabilities Indiana's defense posed in the seasons prior. And I think you saw the progression of that program now, having had that foundation laid defensively, having introduced more and more offense. You think about the effectiveness of the pick and roll that they started to implement, especially in February on, and how that increased some of the efficiencies on offense. Fast forward now, after having another offseason under their belt, Woody's, as he's made mention of, he's got to get the freshmen up to speed on the defensive end first and foremost. And I continue to think that that's going to be largely a determining factor on who's getting what minutes based on who's able to do what he's expected of or expects of them on the defensive end, but then enabling them to start growing and flourishing more on the offensive side. And, along those lines, looking at specifically Renew and Fino, you can see the difference 5-star recruits make. Those guys look so comfortable operating in this more pro style offense that we're seeing now. And I think that speaks testaments to just how far the program's traveled in honestly a really, really short period of time under Woodson.
Yeah, I had talked a lot about the advancement of guys like Jalen Hood-Schifino and Malik Renew on where they had played before and how much higher of a level it is. And I knew that they were more experienced in that regard. But until you actually see it on the floor on how effortlessly they made this transition look, I was pretty shocked. I mean, I'm like, wow, they both look like second-year starters out there. And to be that comfortable in your first big-time D1 game and in the environment that, even though it was against Marion, it's still in Assembly Hall. It's still, you still got the banners up. You're still wearing that Indiana jersey for the first time. I colored me impressed by what I saw. CJ Gunn, another one. I know how confident he is, but until you do it on the floor, and he did 2 or 3 from behind the arc, man, he looked good. That's they're only going to get more comfortable with that.
Oh, no doubt. But, you think about just getting things started and how badly this team struggled, even, throughout a good portion of the season last year, just to get into its offense, especially as defenses started to extend pressure and really frustrate the point of attack. The way in which the offense is being initiated now, bringing one of the bigs up to the top of the key. Look at the interplay between the big and the guard, and to see Renew, and I'm struggling with that one too, man. My brain is programmed to read French in whatever way Southern Indiana boys are taught. But nevertheless, the interplay between those two, the way that they're able to play in space together, to get each other free, to get the ball where the ball needs to go. it seems so effortless in practice because it has been. They've been doing this for years together now, and just a multiplier effect when you put them on the same roster at the college level, with only room to go upwards from here, obviously. But it was a marked improvement from what we've seen even just last year. But you can't understate how important it is to have guys that are, I'm not going to say they're plug and play yet, because let's not forget, these are freshmen. This was an exhibition game against NAIA, but that comfort level up front, the chemistry that's already established there, but also the competitiveness on both ends of the floor, up and down the roster. I just feel like it portends good things for Indiana down the road this year.
Well, and to that point, I was going to say, Mike Woodson made comments throughout the offseason. If I go to you and I put you on the floor for 4 to 5 minutes, you better make the most of that time, because if the situation calls again, I might go to somebody else. I mean, I think he's groomed this team to be super competitive in the offseason, and then through the early season workouts and things of that nature. And I just feel like, again, these are silly stats, right? Because it's a game you should dominate, an NAIA opponent. It's an exhibition, but to get 48 rebounds, to shoot the ball as well as they did, it just, to me, I think he's created a culture of competitiveness. And while it probably gets pretty aggressive, and I'm sure there's some heated moments in practices and in team scrimmages, that translates now to the exhibition, and I think it's going to translate to the regular season. So I think you're right. I think there's a competitive cohesiveness and a chemistry there that Mike Woodson has fostered just in his, just since the end of last season.
No doubt. And I think it's very promising. At the same time, two of Indiana's perhaps 7-8 best players, certainly their best player right now, on the bench in suits. I'll be curious to see when the suits come off. Although along those lines, how cool is it to see Jordy on the sidelines wearing a suit as well? But there's still pieces that remain yet unseen as far as how they're going to interrelate, how they're going to affect the chemistry. But I do think the competitiveness is something that you probably can't overstate enough right now. Obviously we don't get to watch practices. We don't get to see workouts. We don't get to see the open gyms and the shoot arounds. But I do feel like you've seen the product of that, ever so brief of a glimpse. Competition, iron sharpens iron. And to bring that many more talented players in the gym, competing for those precious minutes, I feel like it's bringing the best out of everybody. And I think you're going to see that continue to pay dividends throughout the course of the season, because let's be honest, Woody's even alluded to it here recently in some of his pressers. Last year, first team versus second team was a no contest. Almost exclusively, it was a runaway. Second team could not compete. And you saw that in game during some of those substitutions, some of the platoons that he was running out. There is night and day difference. For that to be addressed in the way in which it has been, I think is going to be exponentially important for Indiana's ability to compete for a Big Ten title and to hopefully put a run together here in postseason this year.
Yeah, this team has got a lot of parts that I'm interested to see continue to flourish. We talk about rotations, and there were, this team has got, they're 13 deep, but you're not going to see 13 guys once you get into North Carolina and those teams. I don't know that you see 10, Chronic, and that means there's going to be some guys not seeing the floor much, but that is because of the talent that would be on the floor. Indiana did not have that last year. They played more guys, I think, last year than they will this season, but that's because they did not. The talent that was out there is much higher this year. Not that the talent on the bench is not good. It's just what's in front of them is just better.
No, there is certainly an increased talent across the board, but more than anything, the depth of talent. Now, I think one thing that we saw pretty evident in Woody's coaching last year that I'm fascinated to see how it continues to play out, the way in which these guys are able to establish trust with the staff. in various situations, in high leverage situations, is going to be paramount. So I think as we're watching some of these, we got one more exhibition left. You got a couple of cupcakes, and then we take that trip over to Cincinnati to go play at Xavier. This is going to be a critical period, these couple of weeks in front of us right now, for these guys to really establish that trust with Woody and the rest of the staff, showing that they can be depended upon. And with still a lot of new faces in the mix, but new faces especially expected to be part of the rotation. Consistency of play, but again, on the defensive end, I think is going to be everything for kind of shaping up what the first month and a half or so of the season is, as we get into these stretches with Carolina, the Kansas, the Arizona, and then as the Big Ten play starts to seep in. I think this is going to be a real fascinating couple of weeks here, just to see how that plays out and who's able to stand out. Because I agree, I don't think you're going to see a 13 person rotation. I don't know if it's going to go 10.
I don't think it will either. I think it's going to get to single digits personally.
But quite honestly, that's not to say that we're not going to see games that are contested games that see 11, 12 players or more in the rotation, just due to situational circumstances,
fouls,
foul trouble, injuries. And again, that's the one asterisk right now as we're starting this season. You got two pretty important pieces that weren't able to go, and whether that's precautionary, whether this is something that's a little bit more than that, remains to be seen. And then, along those lines, how long it holds them out, how long until they're able to get back up to speed. Because make no mistake, for all the work they put in up to this point, these weeks are absolutely crucial in getting guys ready, both mentally as well as physically, for what lies ahead. So the quicker that they can get back out, able to go in full contact up and down, the quicker we're going to see exactly what this team ceiling is going to be this season.
Well,
go ahead.
And I was just going to add real quick to that point. I feel like Indiana too has the depth where I agree. I don't know that it's going to get to 10, 11, 12, whatever the number is. Maybe it's at 8, a 9, a consistent rotation. But you also have the ability to play matchups. And Indiana, I don't think, has had the depth to be able to do that. So you might have a guy who might play 10 minutes in one game and then doesn't see the floor the next game. Doesn't mean he played bad. It's just a matchup situation to me. So you can play a little bit more situational basketball. It's not necessarily just the foul trouble and things of that nature. That's obviously good to have that depth to do so. But I think Mike Woodson can also, go on a game-by-game basis if he needs to. I don't know that he will do that, but I think having that option is certainly going to be a benefit.
Yeah, and I'm specifically looking at the 3 spot, and I know we're not supposed to be talking numbers or positions anymore. But
what
you
is
look
that?
at that.
What's a 3 spot, man? Is that a betting reference, Chronic?
Looking at the Miller Kops, the Trey Galloways, the Jordan Geronimos, and exactly how they plan to be utilized, and who ends up pulling the bulk of the minutes there. Again, I think you're going to probably see who's the most effective on defense, and then from matchup to matchup, exactly how that plays out. But perhaps unlike many years past, Woody's going to have a bevy of options available to him to kind of play with. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see kind of some more experimental rotations here going forward, so he can develop some of that trust and understanding in these guys and exactly what he can expect in those situations.
All right, brother. Where you headed? Let's see. You won't be able to make it to the game on Saturday. Indiana hosting Penn State as the football season continues, and then basketball kicks off for real next Monday, man. Also, but you do have Damon Bailey's son coming in between with St. Francis.
Yes. No, it's a big week here. You talk about football, man. This is you feel like this could be the week where the dam really breaks and the misery flows abound here. We'll see who's starting quarterback. I can promise you it's not going to be me. My eligibility is officially spent. I did check with the clearinghouse a couple years ago, and they said no way, Jose. So we'll see who exactly is under center for Indiana, and we'll see if they can somehow, some way pull out of this tailspin. I'm not feeling super optimistic about it, though, man. I'm not going to lie. And then, the news with Cam Camper's injury right now, and just a salt in the wound. Can we just get 1 year without our best guys going down early?
Chronic Hoosier, cannot thank you enough, my friend.
Thanks as always for having me. We'll see you guys.
There you know him, Chronic Hoosier, brought to you by Andy Moore Honda, Bloomington. You can go to andymorehonda.com for the best in used and new vehicles. We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Dustin Schutte with me as always. We'll be back with it right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Whether you're a business...
Dustin, are you staying with us or no?
I've got to head out.
Okay.
So I will see you guys again tomorrow.
That's right. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hey, when are we doing the podcast this week, John?
I was going to send a text out to everybody today to try to figure, because I've been trying to figure out when my availability is, and because it's kind of spotty this week, but we'll figure something out.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Now that you've left me all alone.
I'm all alone. There's no one here besides me.
I will
Shrek.
Oh, I see. I don't know that song. I will use that other clip in this.
That's fine. Old chatty.
I wish we could get stuff from the radio show.
Does he publish that anywhere?
You know what? That's got to be on YouTube. Or Facebook, one of the two. Or both. I know it is.
I bet they podcast it somewhere.
Well, no,
Even if not.
because I'm always at the show, but I know it's they put it on all that stuff, just like all of us. There we go. Boom. It might be on the Hoosier.com, is it not?
I don't know. I mean, I don't. You're asking the wrong person. Who would have posted it? Keegan?
One of those guys.
The Keegmeister. All right, here we go.
We're now a part of the Rivals Network. The Hoosier.com is where you can find complete coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and plenty more. Simply go to thehoosier.com and sign up. It's free. You can also find full episodes of Indiana Sports Beat Radio on the homepage or on the station every week, Monday through Friday. If we're not on a station where you live, we should be. Ask for Indiana Sports Beat Radio. This segment is brought to you by Courtroom Sports Grill in Bedford. Now back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, everybody, on this Tuesday. I hope you're having a good day and have enjoyed the show up so far. It has been a good one as always. Appreciate Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News for joining us. Dustin Schutte had to bust out a little early. But if you go to the Sporting News, you will find that they have their preseason top 25 rankings out. Kentucky at the top. What they had to say, the reasons for. The difference between the Wildcats and their elite competition for the NCAA championship comes down to two UK advantages: raw talent and defensive potential. With its length, balance, and depth, Kentucky has the ability to become a dynamic, aggressive defensive team without sacrificing too much on what it might do on offense. The addition of Wallace gives UK the opportunity to attack from multiple directions, and if someone's plus-size point guard presents a defensive issues for Wheeler, move to a bigger lineup. Don't forget the Cats also get back shooter CJ Frederick, who missed the chance to help last year's team with its premature demise, but now didn't he come from Iowa?
He did, yes. Excuse me.
I'll be damned. Yeah. See? Transfers, man. One little transfer. North Carolina sitting at number 2. They had a transfer. Pete Nance, who came over from Northwestern. And I've said this before. He was like he's the best player on Northwestern. He goes over to North Carolina. He's only like the 5th best player, but that makes North Carolina that good, that much better. Indiana will get the opportunity to find out. The Tar Heels could just as easily be at the top of this list and have been for many others. They are number 1 in most other polls. It would be less surprising if they won it than any other team. The 4 returning starters proved what they're capable of accomplishing with a formidable run to the NCAA championship game and in their memorable battle with Kansas. So Indiana going to get tested early, man. Kansas is they're down. Where are they? They've got Kansas listed at number 10, which is a little surprising. I'll be honest with you. I'm a little surprised they have Indiana ahead of Kansas. But why they're here, even with 2 terrific starters from last year's championship in Wilson and Harris, this does not immediately appear to be the most imposing roster Kansas has ever fielded. But if you bet $20 on the Jayhawks every time it felt safe to make that statement, you'd have a lot more than $20. Their average Ken Palm finish for Kansas over the past decade is number 9 with 7 top 10 finishes. Self won it all last year with a player almost no big-time programs wanted. Agbaji. And another almost no Kansas fans wanted to keep, and David McCormick. Whatever the best possible team is that can be fashioned from that for this season, we'll make it happen. So we'll see. Indiana gets to play both of those teams early in the season. Plus Xavier, which I don't think Xavier's going to be. From what Xavier got ran off the court by Vanderbilt. So that may be a great opportunity for Indiana to go get a good road victory early in the season. Some confidence, because that's a fun environment there at Xavier. But then they're going to get tested as they'll head out to Las Vegas to take on Arizona on December 10th. And then the week after that, on December 17th, man, they go from the frying pan into the fire as they will head to the Fog Allen in Lawrence, Kansas, to take on the defending national champion Jayhawks. So it's going to be a fun season. Indiana knocks off one of these teams. Let's say they beat Arizona and North Carolina. I mean, you've got North Carolina at home. Now, that's going to be that's a tough ask, even at home. But, hey, this team is good. And having the home court advantage does make a difference. So I think that's going to be a hell of a game. I think the Arizona game is going to be a hell of a game. Arizona's going to have to come ready to play. I think Indiana's going to surprise a few people. I don't expect them to go to Kansas and win. I'm not saying it's impossible. I don't expect that. That's an incredibly tough ask. That's one of the toughest environments in college basketball. Just like it's like coming to Assembly Hall, but opposite. So that's going to be tough, but we'll see. Looking forward to it. Let's see. How much time do we have left? Oh, a little bit of time. I also spoke yesterday with defensive coordinator Chad Wilt. I asked him the same question that I'd asked Tom Allen. What does he need to see over these last 4 games for there to be progress? Because you need to see progress. It can't just be flatlined. You can't just end the season flat or even down. You've got to be swim uphill if you have to. But let's hear what he had to say, John Boyd.
No, great question. Yeah, because we are here, coming down the home stretch. One of the things we challenged our guys with this morning as we met with them was being at the best at the end. Right? We talked about, as a defense, being our best at the end of a drive. Third down or goal line, whatever that may be, being our best at the end of a half, 2-minute situations. We're at the point now. We got to be at our best here at the end of the season. Make sure we're doing that well. I think we've made progress in our run defense. and our run fits and execution up front with our defensive line and linebacker understanding of run fits, we've made progress there. So continue to push that and continue to see that grow and develop. I think we've seen ourselves become more comfortable and confident as a unit with assignments, and developing the depth of some of those young guys and seeing some young guys just continue to, even last week, right? You head into bye weeks, right? It's a development time. And so just, working in the practices, we had some time towards Penn State to work ahead, but more of the focus was us. And we really, spent a lot of time on that. So just, I'd say, in the run defense side and then just development of young guys, seeing those guys, because you're at the end of the season, you got to keep those guys coming along because, seasons happen and, guys get hurt, guys get banged up, or whether it's guys returning or, guys go out, guys got to be able to step up. So, really, I think seeing that depth improve and grow and the fundamental understandings.
Yeah, that's been the pretty much the standard there, seeing the guys that they have grow. I mean, they're not going to say it, but there's no way with what has happened this season that you can expect when the remainder of your schedule is Penn State, who is going to be pissed off because they just lost a very, very tough game to Ohio State. Then after that, you play Ohio State, who has beaten everyone handily. They've scored over 40 points in every game this season, I think. Then you have to travel to Michigan State, who is kind of reeling, maybe an opportunity for an upset. And then you finish with Purdue. Who knows? You could, even though you don't become bowl eligible, if you could knock those 5 wins out, that would take a little of the sting out, I guess you'd say.
Any sort of momentum into the offseason, even though you obviously want to get to the postseason, when people aren't expecting you right now to do those things, even win games at Michigan State or even upset Purdue, if you're able to do that, that creates some semblance of optimism heading into the offseason. It's not what you want necessarily, but it's what you can get at this point to salvage what you've already done, I think.
I agree. We'll find out. We've got 4 weeks left of it. Let's see. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but trying to catch up on some of the comments. One thing I didn't mention earlier when I was talking about the Sporting News top 25 preseason basketball poll, Indiana, of course, at 7. They are, like in every other poll, the highest ranking Big Ten team. But in this one, they're much, much higher than they have been in the other polls. Illinois is at 20, Michigan is at 21, and Michigan State is at 25. So not a lot of confidence in the Big Ten right now, which Illinois is going to be better than people are giving them credit for, just because they don't know that they have so many new players that from the transfer portal. They're going to be better. Michigan, people don't know about them. They have Hunter Dickinson, but how's everyone else going to blend into that? I don't know how good Michigan's going to be. I'll be honest with you. Illinois is a team that I think is going to be the team that really gives Indiana more fits than anyone. But of course, Purdue is not going away. They're not depleted, nor is Michigan State. So it's going to be a fun season. Looking forward to it. We've already seen what it's going to look like. And it's going to be great for Damon Bailey's son to get to play in Assembly Hall. That's got to be pretty cool. That'll have to be pretty cool for Damon to see that as well. So congratulations to them. Hey, we got lots more to coming up tomorrow, Wednesday, of course. Our buddy Bob Kravitz from The Athletic. He didn't have anything to do with that poll that I talked about earlier. But seeing that shows you how funny. Indiana picked to be the most disappointing team in one and 7th in another. Cracks me up.
He'll definitely have thoughts to share about it, I'm sure, though.
Absolutely. And look forward to that and much more as he'll talk about the Colts as well and what's going on with those guys. Kyle Nedrip
as we are in the midst of the high school football playoffs, and our great friend Rick Bozich, the Hall of Fame writer, will join us as well. So looking forward to that. I cannot thank everybody enough. As always, looking forward to doing it again. You guys are always the best. Without you, we've got no reason to be here. We'll be back tomorrow to do it again. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.